Yo, welcome back to Son of a Preacher Man. Soapman is in the house. So for the last few episodes, we've been talking about the biblical character Nimrod. The Bible says that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord, and it states that his kingdom was in southern Mesopotamia, in the land of Shinar, which we today know as the land of Sumer. We've identified Nimrod in the historical books as Enmerkar, the ruler and builder of the city-state of Uruk. We've also identified Nimrod through his link to the Tower of Babel story with the establishment of writing and bringing an established writing system into the world. The Bible also states that Nimrod was the son of Cush, which suggests that he was probably black. For the better part of history, Nimrod has gotten a bad name. He is often portrayed as a tyrant or a villain. In my last episode, I talked about a story in the Bible where just after the flood, Noah gets drunk in his vineyard and his son Ham sees his nakedness. He sees his father passed out in the vineyard and he sees his nakedness. And he runs back and he tells his brothers, Japheth and Shem, who cover Noah's nakedness. They walk backwards and cover Noah's nakedness. The Bible states that when Noah awakes, he becomes aware of what his son Ham had done to him. And he curses Ham through his son Canaan. Noah curses the son of Ham, Canaan, in stating that Canaan will serve the descendants of his other two brothers. This is definitely a legitimate reason why people believe the descendants of Ham, which include Nimrod, to be cursed. This is a legitimate and reasonable and rational reason that would lead people to believe that Ham and his descendants, including Nimrod, were cursed. And then there's the story of the Tower of Babel. Nimrod is linked to the construction of the Tower of Babel, a tower which was believed to have been built in opposition and defiance to God for him sending the flood to wipe out mankind. So for all these reasons, for a variety of reasons, Nimrod has gotten a bad rap through history. There are some extra biblical sources that paint Nimrod as a mixed bag, who ultimately, before he dies, repents of his sins and forms this relationship with God. But most of the time, throughout history, Nimrod has been colored bad. Okay, so let's take it from the top. After the flood, the world was populated by Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham being the father of Cush. Cush is widely accepted as the ancestor of black people. This is what makes people think Nimrod is a ninja. Now, I know that may make some people uncomfortable, ninjas having the reputation that they have.
Well, first of all, they're lazy, good-for-nothing tricksters, crack-smoking swindlers, big butt having, wide nose breathing on the white man's air. They eat up all the chicken.
Yes, these good-for-nothing hoodlums and thugs are always up to trouble. And they sometimes roam in packs or gangs, if you will. And if that wasn't frightening enough, Nimrod is believed to have been a giant. You see, the Bible talks about a time when giants roamed the earth. It says in Genesis chapter 1-4, there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, Nimrod living during the time period of also after that. So not only was Nimrod most likely a ninja, but he was a giant ninja. Imagine that. For the most part, we know where the descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth went. Not Japheth migrated north between the Caspian and Black Sea and populated what is now known as Ukraine, Russia, and Europe. Shem occupied the Middle Levant area or the Middle Eastern area, Asia, and what would be known as Persia. The descendants of Ham went to Africa. The descendants of Ham migrated south. They occupied some parts of the Levant, but mostly Africa. To this very day, the descendants of Ham can be found in Africa. So why do we have a descendant of Cush ruling in southern Mesopotamia if they're supposed to be in Africa? Experts and professionals, archaeologists and scientists, biblical scholars, they do not understand why a black man is ruling in southern Mesopotamia when he should be over in Africa somewhere. The Soapman is going to solve this conundrum, okay? The way that modern day experts and scientists make sense of a descendant of Cush ruling in southern Mesopotamia is that they say it didn't happen. They say that it's a mistake. They say Nimrod was not a descendant of Cush at all. They say the ancient historians made a mistake. They say, well, no, Nimrod could not have been a son of Cush. It must have been a typo, or the ancient historians made a mistake. They say, no, we think Nimrod was the son of Kish, not Cush. If Nimrod is the son of Cush, he's most likely black. And they do not understand why a black man would be ruling outside of where they place black people. Black people are placed in Africa, and you have supposedly a black man ruling in southern Mesopotamia. And they just cannot wrap their head around that because it does not make sense to them, and I don't blame them. On the surface, it does not make sense. So they say to themselves, the way they sleep at night is they say, the people who are giving us this information must have made a mistake. It's not Cush that Nimrod descends from. It's a man named Kish, a non-African individual named Kish. You see Kish, Cush, you see how it could be easy to confuse those two? So listen to where the experts stand in their own words.
One puzzling detail in the Nimrod story is his genealogy. He's listed as the son of Cush, but Cush is the Hebrew name for ancient Nubia, an African kingdom south of Egypt. In the biblical Table of Nations, Cush is a descendant of Ham, while Mesopotamian nations are usually traced through Shem. So Nimrod's placement here is odd. It's also geographically confusing, since Nubia and Mesopotamia are nowhere near each other.
Folks, if you listen closely to what this gentleman is saying, you'll see that he's explaining to you what I just explained to you. These experts cannot wrap their head around a black man who they feel like is supposed to be in Africa ruling in southern Mesopotamia. It does not make sense to them. You'll hear the words this man used. He says it's odd. It's odd. It doesn't make sense. Why is this black man, why is he out of place?
To explain this mismatch, the scholar Yigal Levine published a paper in 2002, proposing that the biblical author may have confused Cush with Kish, a well-known city near Babylon in ancient Mesopotamia.
Hey, yo, you ever lost something and couldn't find it? You start checking in places that you didn't already checked like 5 times. You start checking in odd places that you know it couldn't possibly be. This type of behavior can be described in one word: desperation. That's what these scholars are feeling. That is what these scholars and experts are experiencing. Desperation. They can't figure out why the Bible and the history books and the historians would say that a son of Cush is ruling anywhere but Africa. Here's another YouTuber singing the same old song.
Some scholars have suggested the Kazites of Iran in the city of Kish could be connected to the descendants of Cush in some sort of way.
Now look, I'm not coming down on these YouTubers. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to suggest that they racist or trying to keep Nimrod from being black. This is genuinely confusing. These are people putting forth a real effort to try to figure out what's going on, and I'm not here to criticize their methods. I'm here to say that they're on the wrong path, and they're wrong, and they're in error, or that they're heading for an error, and I want to explain why. Now, this next guy coming up, this next YouTuber, I really pressed him. I sent him a question in his comment section, and he was polite enough to respond, and we had a back and forth discourse. And what it was about was I wanted to know from him why, if all the historical books and all the historians said that Nimrod was the son of Cush, if all of them agree, why would we think they got it wrong?
Perhaps the most challenging is his genealogy. Nimrod presents a problem, however. We are told in verse 8 that Nimrod is also a son of Cush. But unlike the other 5, Nimrod is an individual, not a nation. These 2 verses belong to different contexts, and there is a jarring mismatch when we read them together.
Why is a descendant of Cush ruling in southern Mesopotamia? It just does not make sense.
An even bigger problem is the question of why Nimrod, who is clearly based in Mesopotamia, should be associated with Nubia. The cities that Nimrod founds and rules have no connection with that distant land. Explaining this has always been a difficulty.
If you haven't seen my previous videos, you are going to be astonished at the simplicity of the solution.
Possibility is raised that the Cush of the Nimrod legend is a different Cush than the one in the genealogy. Nimrod should be connected not with Nubia, but rather with the city of Kish in Mesopotamia. This is very interesting.
So I commented on this last YouTuber's video. This last YouTuber that I just showed you a clip of, I commented on that video. And me and him got into this back and forth discourse about the genealogy of Nimrod. And what I wanted to know from him was, why, if all the historical sources, both biblical and non-biblical, identify Nimrod as the son of Cush, why do we now think they was making a mistake? Folks, the Bible clearly says in Genesis chapter 10, and Cush begot Nimrod. It says that after going through the genealogy of Ham. It says, and Cush begot Nimrod. It's one thing to claim that you a believer in the Bible and then turn around and say the authors of the Bible made a mistake. That's one thing. But even all the extra biblical sources identify Nimrod as being the son of Cush. Like, for example, Josephus. And I brought this to this last YouTuber's attention. He had these reasons why Josephus was just copying somebody else. But that doesn't disprove my point. My point being, whoever Josephus copied identified Nimrod as the son of Cush. And the reason that that source that Josephus copied identified Nimrod as the son of Cush is because it was a widely accepted and established fact to the ancient historians, to the ancient scholars and scribes. It was a widely accepted and established fact that that Nimrod was a descendant of Cush. So why do we not just want to take the Bible's word for it? Why do we squish and squirm in our chair trying to fit square pegs into circle holes? The ancient Sumerians lived and ruled in southern Mesopotamia at the time of Nimrod. I think you would agree that what they have to say on the matter might be relevant. According to the Sumerians, after the flood, Meshki-Gashur, son of the sun god Utu reigned as priest and king. Now, Meshki-Gasher is believed to be Cush, and the sun god is believed to be his father Ham. And it says Meshki-Gasher entered the sea and ascended into the mountains, and Enmerkar, the son of Meshki-Gasher, who built Uruk, reigned as king for 420 years. We've identified Enmerkar with Nimrod. So essentially what the Sumerians are saying is that after the flood, Cush ruled as king. It goes on to say that Cush entered the sea and left the kingship to his son Enmerkar. I tried to tell you a couple episodes ago why a descendant of Cush was ruling in southern Mesopotamia and wasn't somewhere off in Africa. And the simple answer was they had to get there. Those people who would later occupy and live in Africa, well, they had to get to Africa, my friend. If you look at my arrow at the top of your screen, when Noah's Ark came to rest in the mountain range of Ararat, which is in present-day eastern Turkey, the Armenia region, the three descendants of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, were living amongst each other, mixing and mingling before they split apart. Japheth eventually went north, and Ham and Shem stayed together as they traveled south. But before they split apart and as they split apart, this thing didn't happen in a vacuum. It was a lot of mixing, mingling, and chaos. And so they were together for a while before they were apart. Especially the descendants of Ham and Shem. They stayed together as they migrated south towards the homeland that they knew prior to the flood in southern Mesopotamia. And the descendants of Ham were the first to rule. The Sumerians say that Cush entered the sea. Now, why would they say that? What could they be talking about? Well, the only large body of water in the area that could even remotely be considered a sea is the Persian Gulf. Now, why would the Sumerians say that Cush entered into the Persian Gulf? Well, it was to get to Africa. Cush, the descendant of Ham, would enter the sea because after migrating to southern Mesopotamia with his relative and brother Shem, he was going to further migrate to Africa. Cush entered the sea because the descendants of Ham weren't done migrating. They migrated further through the sea and around today the Arabian Peninsula into Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea. I can't never pronounce that country. You know what I'm talking about. Eastern Africa. Folks, I've taken up enough of your time talking about Nimrod. I want to thank you for joining me for this episode of Son of a Preacher Man. If you enjoy this type of content, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you got any compliments, comments, or insults, please leave them in the comments section. If you got any topics you'd like me to discuss or questions you'd like me to answer, please also leave them in the comments section. In my next episode, I'll be finishing up my series on Nimrod. I hope you've enjoyed it this far. Please stick with the Soapman. I got some real big episodes coming up at the end of the year and also at the beginning of the year. I'll see you next time. Same soap time, same soap channel. Soapman out.